Hey everybody, welcome back. This week on my channel, finally, the engine is in. What we have to do now is swap out the bell housings. The pump is actually bolted to the bell housing. You can see all the passages here where the fluid runs through. Before we can bolt it to the back of the 6.4, you're going to need a starter mounting plate. This aligns the V8 starter. In addition, we have our new flywheel that we're going to need. This big box here is the new torque converter, and you need a new bushing to go in the back of the crank on the 6.4 and on the snout of the new torque converter so that it lines up. It's a bit different size than the one that came out of the 3.6. There's not going to be a lot of video on the actual install. I'll show you the time-lapse video while I'm talking to you about the drop. There's a few things that I want to point out that if you're doing this. So in the last video, you saw that I got the bell housing in finally, and in the process of putting the transmission back together, I noticed that the O-ring on the transmission fluid pump was leaking. So I didn't want to put all that back together and have it continue to leak. So we ordered a new O-ring for the transmission fluid pump. We got that in. We got all the bolts torqued up. It was a simple swap. It's nothing that you guys can't do at home without any issues. So the converter that I bought from Jeep, which was the recommended part number from Dakota Customs, who supplied our swap kit, was already filled with fluid. You want to make sure when you put your transmission back together that the converter's filled with fluid. You want to make sure that the oil pump is coated with transmission fluid. We ended up cleaning ours with brake fluid and got the O-ring off before we put the new one on, so we went ahead and soaked it with trans fluid, and we got everything together. The kit comes with, what did it come with, 6 bolts for the trans? I think the kit came with 6 bolts for the transmission to bolt it on. On the 6 bolts on the top, we got the supplied cradle that works to support the bottom of the transmission to the rear block pads with the steel pan. That was in another episode earlier. I showed you guys that. I ended up using the rest of the transmission bolts from the 3.6 to finish bolting the transmission up. It's very important when you do your drop to make sure that you have as many accessories on here as you can. And I'm not necessarily talking about front accessories, but you know, obviously that's the time to do it when it's on the engine stand. You will not get manifolds on here once this engine's in here. It is literally impossible. This is very tight clearances. Kudos to Dakota Customs for supplying that JK Hemi swap kit. It worked flawlessly. It fits like a glove. I mean, it is tight, 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 but nothing's hitting. I left the intake off so it was easier to get the engine in. There would have been some firewall clearances, especially with that Edelbrock intake that we got. I don't know if there would have been any clearances with the 6.4 intake that came with it, but we opted for the Edelbrock. Dakota Customs recommended installing the wiring harness once you get the transmission and the engine bolted together. There's a lot of connections that go on the transmission that run from the top of the engine, the back portion of the engine against the firewall, that run down the side. And actually, I forgot. I kind of wish we'd have done it, but in hindsight, at least we didn't screw anything up, pinch a wire, cut insulation off trying to get it in. So, I mean, we'll be okay. The intake's off. I got plenty of room to get in there and do things. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. As you can see from this video here, everything fits really, really well. So the whole reason that we got the Edelbrock intake was because it has a forward-facing throttle body mount and not off to the left or off to the right like some of the factory Dodge manifolds. The kit came with all of the stuff to make the airbox on the driver's side, but we were really trying to keep the rugged ridge snorkel, and by getting the Edelbrock intake that has the forward-facing throttle body mount, you know, we can always come up with something that angles to the right 90 degrees to come over here to see if we could make that work. We got some close clearances where the manifolds come out. I mean, it's nothing impossible. We can get an exhaust system on there. The harness in the computer is designed for 402 sensors. So you have 2 before the cats and 2 after the cats. We're going to run cats. I live in a portion of Illinois that still has emissions testing. My son lives in LA. They have emissions testing wherever the Jeep is at. It's got to get tested. So the swap kit came with all of the things you need to use the 6.4 intake and their airbox. They have an airbox that goes here. They have a relocation bracket that goes over here where this piece of factory inner fender well is that I cut off and modified, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But they have the washer bottle relocation kit goes here, and then they have a polished aluminum long overflow tank that goes here, but we're not doing that because if you've seen the other videos, this Jeep used to have a rugged ridge snorkel on it, and it actually went here where the corner piece of the fender goes, and it came down here and went under and alongside the engine to the bottom of the airbox that they supplied, and we can't use it with the 6.4 in here. So we're going to get the AEV snorkel that goes along the A-pillar and up the fender, and then we end up cutting that section of the hood out to use that. But what we're doing for the moment is I cut this factory piece off and put it in because the AEV uses the factory lower portion of the airbox, and then there's a special upper lid they have that clears this radiator hose. It comes like this, so the bottom of the front portion of their box is literally flat, and it has this radius in it for the radiator hose to go, and then the top of it comes up. But we want to get it running first, and we'll worry about the snorkel later. But for the time being, I have to make sure that nothing is going to be in the way. So I've got everything tidied up and moved and cleaned up. These are the cables for the winch that I'm going to have to reroute. What we ended up doing, though, since we're not using the 6.4 intake and having everything over here, is we were able to keep the factory washer bottle. This is the AEV brand overflow bottle that they used on their Hemi swaps. And I was shocked that they still have it available, and it was so cheap, we bought 2 just to have a spare. You can see here how close this is. This is probably just a playing card's thickness right there. I may end up having to loosen the screws in the back and raise it up in the slots a little bit more, and then tighten it back down so that that doesn't get damaged when the engine torques. But the kit also came with AC lines. There's new power steering lines. This is the overflow for the radiator bottle. The kit came with the Mishimoto radiator. As a matter of fact, it has all of the mounting points for the fan, and you use your factory condenser and your factory oil cooler. The kit came with everything you need and instructions on how to cut and modify the trans lines because they're now flexible. They go here and up underneath. Came with a power steering cooler kit and a bracket that I used threaded inserts on. It came with the SRT manifolds. It came with the motor mounts. Everything really fit perfect. We did not have to fight anything installing this, and it is tight. I can only imagine if I have a power steering leak or an AC leak or something, I'm going to be sad, because really the only way to deal with that is to disassemble it. You know, you got to take the core support off and everything else to get in there. I just can't imagine how difficult that would be. So, but there's enough room underneath for exhaust. You can see the battery tray here. It has the same type of fasteners for this to go in. We have the gauge pod hooked up on the dash. These are the wires for that. I got 2 taps here and grounds to the front of the block. This is the water temp sensor for the gauges. I have an oil temp down there next to the factory oil temp. So there's one more important thing you guys need to know about if you're doing any of these swaps with MOLLE products, crate engines specifically. The 2012 and earlier vehicles, for the most part, I think all ran the HOT, the hybrid organic antifreeze. The Hemi crate motor requires the OAT. That's what it says in the instruction manual. We have a warranty. That's what we're going to run. I don't want to find out the hard way if anything happens that I'm not covered. We do have a new radiator, new engine, new hoses. Nothing's been run through it. But what you need to keep in mind is your heater core. That still has the hybrid organic antifreeze in it. So what happens when the two mix is it creates a chemical reaction and it turns the stuff into jello. So you run the risk of filling up all your coolant passages in your brand new motor or used motor or rebuilt motor, your radiator, your heater core, and that's a headache that you don't want. So remember the heater core, couple pieces of long hose. You can blow compressed air through it, fill it up with distilled water to neutralize anything that's left in there, and blow it all out. I've read online that residue is not going to be a factor, but I don't really know how much is going to be a problem, and I don't want to find out the hard way. So keep that in mind when you do one of these swaps. We're really excited to get it running. I can't wait for you guys to see it. We're gonna run it when I get the fuel delivery system finished. I still need exhaust, but we'll fire it up with open manifolds, and I'll put up a YouTube short video for you guys to check out. So the folks at Super Clean saw my channel and they sent me some of their products. One of the new things they have that I didn't know about is the all-wheel cleaner, and they also have this regular Super Clean in an aerosol can. Now, I've been using this stuff forever, since it first came out, and what I primarily use it for is to clean the sidewalls on tires. It's really good at getting the brake dust off the sidewall, especially if you're running track pads. I've used it to clean adhesive off lots of things. You can soften paint with it if you want to soak something in it. It's great for cleaning engines. That's what I use it. Another thing I use it for is detailing engine compartments. I use Super Clean, a soft bristled parts cleaner brush, and I just get in there and scrub it up, and then I lightly mist it down with water to run everything off. And then I use a leaf blower basically to clean the engine compartments and the wheels after I get done washing them to get the water out. So when you're done cleaning your wheels, this is what you get. It's a great product. You guys should check it out.